Great Rubino on the second episode of the Super Fan Series. I'm here with Erez, Zach, and Maiya in no particular order. That's just my screen order. How is everyone today?
Far so good, Jeremy. Good to be
All
here.
right.
Yeah, doing great. Thrilled to be here.
Maiya has been interviewed way back when for this website, probably 10 years ago at least.
Something like that.
Zach's sister was on the show just a couple months ago. And, you know, Erez is now a big deal, and he's in LA. And
I think I was one of those contributors with Rabbi Jeff Abraham back in the day.
Back in the day, we were first starting. We were doing all sorts of weird stuff, and it was a totally different vibe. But yes, absolutely, you did right, and Jeff and Lauren helped too. So we were tracking down these Jewish athletes, which brings us to today's topic, which is Jewish NCAA basketball, which I think maybe give a little bit of each of your background and why, at least you believe, I emailed you to be on today's episode. Maybe we'll start with Maiya.
Sure. Thanks so much, Jeremy, for inviting me on here today. So yeah, I'm Maiya. And this is a really fun, I made this joke earlier, it's really fun to be on this recording with all of you. You'll meet Zach in a minute, who's a student I've gotten to know the past few years, but the other two guys, we've been talking about college sports since we were all in college together. And this is something, a passion we all have. So I was actually a student athlete in college in softball. Erez was at some of my games, I believe, remembers that. Yeah. So I have a passion for college athletics. I really, love what it did for me personally and in my life, but I've just, I've always loved basketball. My high school, I don't know if people know this, was a really basketball focused high school, especially our girls team. We actually have a couple women who are in the WNBA who came from our high school, which was a small school. So it's always been kind of part of my social routine was to follow basketball. And currently I'm the Hillel director at Texas Hillel, which is at UT Austin. You'll hear more about our basketball program, Hook'em Horns, in a bit. But over 12 years of working at Hillel, also, I used to work at Maryland, which is a big basketball school. And it's just always been a really fun sport to follow. And over the years, had a chance to get to know some Jewish student athletes working on the Hillel side, which has been really special. So can talk more about other stuff later, but I'll start there.
Oh, she's being modest. She threw a no-hitter in college, which we should know. So, all right. And Zach, what about you? I know you've got some good stories from the team.
Yeah, for sure. First of all, thanks for having me on. Thanks for Maiya for connecting us. So a couple different things I think got me on here. So just background growing up, grew up going to Jewish day school, playing high school basketball. We made state my senior year. Is really exciting for kind of my school and the whole community. So then in college, kind of embarked on both basketball and Jewish journeys yet again. I currently practice with the Texas women's basketball team. There's actually 2 Jewish guys on the practice team and 2 managers. So we're really jumping in that environment. And then I'm also one of the co-chairs, basically the president of the student side of Hillel International. So connect with Jewish students across the world for Ukraine, Brazil, Israel, different topics. And one of those cool things that I've done with that is also attend the National Hillel Basketball Tournament in Maryland. So see some of the best Jewish athletes at the college level at a really fun tournament.
Zach, I want to come back to that eventually because I know that should be a big part of what we talk about. Erez, what about you?
And National Hillel Basketball Tournament, we had a Columbia team when it was just starting. I don't know if Jeremy was there too, but we played at Princeton. It was like Yeshiva, Columbia, Princeton, Rutgers, and a lot of like Gan Asia Chinese food. I don't know but growing up in Syracuse, New York, religion and basketball basically go hand in hand. My dad was a rabbi in Syracuse, and you didn't schedule shul things when there was a game at the Dome. My friends knew if they came to shul, they were probably getting a couple of tickets, and we were walking down Euclid Avenue to the Dome right after services, come back, make it back by Mincha. Coach Boeheim, huge influence. I'll have him on my show next week. On the court, but really off the court as well. I had a brother of blessed memory that passed away at special needs really most of his life, and sports was an escape, but also an inspiration, and specifically with college basketball with Coach Boeheim. Also, what Zach said, managers and practice players. Lots of managers came through Syracuse University that were Jewish, and the shul on the high holidays, there was a whole row from doctors, everybody, managers, walk-ons dealing with that. So we had many Jewish player who came through Syracuse at our Shabbos and mostly Seder table as well. And also during Christmas break, Syracuse being a broadcast school, lots of Newhouse guys. Jason Horowitz, I'm actually in contact with Noah Eagle, son of Ian Eagle right now. All these Syracuse guys, they would keep them for Christmas break to do the games, and they would often end up at our Shabbos table as well.
That's awesome. I love that. Let's talk about Boeheim for a little bit, because Erez, I think it's probably the first word you said to me ever. It's just like Boeheim, and I was like, "Oh, hi, I'm Jeremy." But you are his biggest fan, and I know he's coming on your show. So tell us about that relationship your family had. I know with him, and I know for a while he had an assistant coach who was Jewish on his bench. He's had several Jewish players over the year. They currently have one, in Feldman. So he certainly has a connection to the Jewish community. You want to talk about that relationship a little bit more?
Yeah, my dad created a dinner, because now I'm in LA, but Syracuse wasn't in LA. And we would basically do, it's called the Citizen of the Year dinner. And they would honor national prominent person, whether Elie Wiesel, Hillary Rodham Clinton, Mayor Giuliani, and then 3 local people. And Coach Boeheim was always very supportive of that. He got up once at that dinner, about 1,000 people in our shul, and he said, "Does the rabbi give as many suggestions at this synagogue as he does at my practices?" So his humor off the court is like bar none. If you see him on the court, and Google Jim Boeheim and ridiculous pictures. But like I said, there wasn't a hospital visit that he would never do. There wasn't a birthday. When my brother was 5 years old, my dad asked him, "Can you send a couple players over?" My brother had just come home from the hospital, being in the hospital for 2 years. We thought we were getting 2 walk-ons. Instead, we got Derek Coleman and Stevie Thompson, who's the father of Ethan Thompson, who's an assistant coach of Oregon State right now. That's the type of kindness. And in fact, he's coming on next week, because April 24th is the basketball, which raises money for Coaches versus Cancer. It'll be virtual again, but the whole world can watch. We really want to promote that piece as well. He's not a talker. He's not a schmoozer. He's not a Rick Pitino, even though he's close with Pitino. He keeps to himself. In his book, Bleeding Orange, he talks about being a loner. And he enjoys that. He enjoys reading books and things like that. But he knows how to coach a basketball team, and he always shows up in March.
I think he's of this generation, I think he's the second best tournament coach. The first being Tom Izzo, and Jim Boeheim being second. The other guys have had all the talent in the world. These guys take teams with talent and without talent and make sure they make a run. So Zach, I know you and Maiya were bragging in before we started recording that Texas had the #1 draft pick in the WNBA draft. So tell us a little bit about your experience practicing with the team. Are you just there to be another body? Do you go to games? How does it work?
Yeah, for sure. So I got to college kind of aware of this opportunity at other schools. An alum from my high school played on the practice squad at Maryland, actually, and he had told me about it, but I didn't actually get involved in it until last year. And last year when I joined, there were about 10, 15 guys at most practices. So we didn't always do a lot. We were involved in a lot of the drills, but because there were so many guys, we were in and out. And I wouldn't say I was that involved. And then this year, there was a coaching change. So they brought in Coach Vic Schaefer from Mississippi State, who's a really dominant coach, has made 2 NCAA championships with the team there, to kind of rehaul the program and try to get it back to its dominance in the 80s and 90s. And because of COVID, everyone had to test 3 times a week, and it was a lot more of a commitment. So way less guys showed up to practice. So now I'm at practices with a new coaching staff that involves us in practically every drill. And there's 5 or less guys at all the practices. So really for about 5 months, if they were in town, I was in the gym with them for 2 to 3 hours every day. And it wasn't standing on the sidelines at all. I'd say half the practice is just general drills. So whatever they're doing, we're doing too. And then the other half, we're scouting. So all the Big 12 teams, those Baylor girls who got drafted last night, the West Virginia star who went at 4, a lot of those people, if they're guards, I've probably been them and I've probably scouted as them. And it's a really cool experience just to see sports at a higher level than something I ever got to see in high school. And as someone who probably wasn't going to go play D1, maybe, walk on D3, something like that, but I wanted to go to a big school. It's cool to be able to play at this high level, especially with people who are now making it at the pros, especially with Charlie Collier, who's the #1 pick last night.
So Maiya, being at Texas, both men's and women's, great programs. Let's talk about you as a professional. Does the scheduling of your programming, is it impacted by the basketball games or football games, I guess, for this question? And, so, or do you play into it? Meaning like you do stuff at the stadium, et cetera.
Great question. First of all, I want to say when Zach committed to doing the practice squad this year and talked about the COVID testing, we were going through our whole Hillel COVID protocol. I did joke with Zach that he's probably the most tested active Hillel student leader, and maybe he'd like have access to the parts of the building that were off limits to others. But it's great hearing about Zach's experience doing that. So great question. So first of all, when we think about Hillel, like we want to be fully integrated into university life and campus life, and certainly at a place like Texas, sports is near the top of that list. I would say in the fall, we absolutely consider the football schedule. When we think about if we're doing, a big Shabbat program in a non-COVID year, we would never schedule it the weekend of the Texas OU game when everyone's going to Dallas, right? Because the game is played in Dallas every year. So we're very in tune with that. I think basketball less, so there's also more games, but it's something that we're really aware of, I'm actually hopeful for both the men's and women's programs that we're going to see some uptick in general fan support, student support. I think both programs are in a really great upward trajectory. And so, yeah, it is part of something we consider. And I also think as the Hillel director, it happens to be I love sports, which is one of the reasons I wanted to be at this kind of campus. But like, I have season tickets for softball because that's my first love, as we all know. But like, I love going to games. I love knowing what's going on. I love hearing about the coaching changes and who the good players are, because it's also part of our campus life. It's what we talk about with students. It's what I talk about with alumni all the time. So yeah, I think it definitely plays a role. Yeah.
So I went to the University of Illinois, where Zach, very similar story. Like I had a 102 D1 sort of tryout potentials if I wanted them, but I wanted to go to a big school, tried out. Bill Self comes over. He's like, no one's making the team. I'm like, I got it. We had D Brown and Darren Williams and Frankie Williams is still there. That team was insane. So there's like 5 NBA players, right? So but also being here at the barn in Minnesota, which I go to every Illini game when it's here. And my executive director has 3 rows up, so you're basically in the barn still, so you're like under the basket. It's so cool. It's really a really awesome place to go see a game, but very different. Orange Crush is known for these like big fan experiences. Everything's orange. And Minnesota games are like mostly alumni. There's like a student section, and sometimes if it's a like when Illinois is not good, like that section is not full. There's never an Illini game where the Orange Crush isn't full, except for COVID. But like so Maiya and all of you, I guess, have you done programming with the college basketball teams? And how does that work?
Yeah, so 5 years ago, I started a basketball camp, which I know Jeremy's also familiar with, STBC, Sinai Temple Basketball Camp. There's 3 gyms here in the shul at in Sinai Temple. I'm in LA. I'm not in Syracuse anymore. By the way, very hard to watch Syracuse at 4 p.m. Eastern. The ESPN app saying who won the game. It's very disappointing. I started a basketball camp because I realized all the Jewish kids were playing in these public school leagues, mostly coached by their dads, who, to be honest, who weren't coaches, they're parents. And I thought I could bring it into the synagogue and realize that they didn't have to check their kippah at the door and be high-level basketball, high-level values. And it was very successful. Actually, registration starts in 40 minutes for the weeks in June, if you're anybody watching out there. But the first thing I did was Google Syracuse basketball alumni Los Angeles, and I found a couple of guys that played in the 90s, and I said, come on over, give a little inspirational speech, and let's start networking. And from there, we went to Karan Butler, Courtney Lee, Jaron Collins, and amazing people that really believe in our mission. Every day of that camp, we do a social action project. We have a special needs clinic as part of that. We feed the homeless as connection with the church down the street. So yeah, we have connected, and obviously this year with UCLA and Mick Cronin, that's my next outreach. Just bought 4 season tickets after that amazing game against Gonzaga. But we're down the street, and I want the synagogue to be a center of recreation where both sports and faith values. And by the way, when I'm interviewing all these people, I don't talk about on the court. It's off the court, and their stories are unbelievable, and they don't want to stop talking. So there is deep faith in the sports world that I'm excited to be bringing out.
Yeah, absolutely. Maiya and Zach?
I'll turn over to Zach in one second. I mean, I think I would love, I think there's opportunities to do more programming, like aligned with the games. A lot of students go, we've explored some of that in the past. We actually have a few student athletes, not right now on basketball, who are Jewish and who have been a part of our programs, which is always really special. There's a student who's actually from Chicago, Jeremy, who's on our men's swim team, which just won another national championship. And he actually did our learning fellowship here called Life's Big Questions. And it was on the one night he didn't have practice. And he chose to be a part of it. And that was great. He's a student, he's wonderful. But what was really neat was the other students in the class were like, wow, now I'm going to care about Texas men's swimming that I might not have known before. I'm going to go, and because you feel a connection. And I think that that's a really neat opportunity. But I think something Zach mentioned earlier was the National Hall Basketball Tournament, which before COVID, I'd put it on pause. I'll be honest, having worked previously at Maryland with the students who run the tournament is a program I felt very close to, but Zach can talk about the efforts we did to send teams there and what that kind of meant for the community here. So.
Yeah, and I can actually say, because I have such a love for basketball and such a love for Judaism, there's really 3 different tiers of things that we've done to connect them. One is I spoke with Maiya. I said, if I get Jewish guys from all the different fraternities, will you fund an intramural team? It's not expensive, but it's just nice. And Maiya said, yeah. So we made a Texas Hillel intramural basketball team. And that was something we did semester after semester. We can't play basketball right now because of COVID, but there's softball. So the same guys are playing softball, right? So that's one, is we had the intramural team. We started a Texas Hillel basketball tournament that we did both years before COVID, which is a 3-on-3 tournament, got a ton of involved and uninvolved Jews in a gym on campus playing, winning, participating. And then we also brought teams to the National Hillel basketball tournament. In my freshman year, we got second place in double overtime at the championship of the tier that we were in. So I think there are all, what?
Who was first?
Who beat us? It was Queens College, I think. We beat Columbia on a buzzer beater in the semifinals. It was very satisfying.
And despite what they say, I was cheering for Texas in that game.
My phone back says Columbia, so I was excited to take it down. But yeah, so I think there's been a lot of involvement in terms of bringing the Jewish students and the game of basketball together, even if it hasn't been directly with student athletes of the teams.
Yeah, I've heard wonderful things about this tournament, and actually, I had built that when I was Hillel president. We had gotten all the Big Ten schools to agree to basically do this. We had nothing, 10 years, and I pitched it, I think, to Richard Joel, and who was the international director. It just never came to fruition. But I remember when I saw it, I was like, either someone was listening to me and kept that in the back of their mind for 10 years, or someone had the same idea 10 years later. Nothing, everything new is old. So I want to leave with one question, which is about representation on the court. Who's your favorite Jewish basketball player? College. Let's just say college. First of all, there's a lot more. And do you feel a sense of pride when you see that? I mean, I know I do, which is the main reason I have this website. And there's a lot of excitement around that. So, and have you interacted with players? Tell us, maybe there's one or two maybe we'll start with Erez.
So you're talking about present, right?
Or in the past.
Yeah. So the ultimate is actually Danny Shays. He was a neighbor of ours growing up in Syracuse. I actually really knew his father more, Dolph of blessed memory. We used to have Sunday morning bagels in Syracuse, and a wonderful, wonderful man. I have a signed poster of him with the top 50 NBA players. He made a gigantic impact on the game and what it means to be Jewish. There was not a Seder at my synagogue that he did not attend with his wife, Naomi, also blessed memory. But if I go to now, it's Kai Feldman. He's from out here in LA. He went to Syracuse. He went back to Syracuse to be an administrative assistant, and he wants to get into the coaching world. And also, by the way, he has the Israel connection, which I think is crucial with what we do here at Sinai. We were supposed to go last year. We were supposed to go this summer to take a trip to Israel through sports and go to the Maccabi games, and hopefully we'll go next year. So Israel is a huge part of that as well, and Kai fits all those categories. I was always texting him during that amazing Buddy Boeheim run as well.
Go now, it's probably safer than being in the States. They don't need, starting Sunday,
no masks. Yeah.
We're sitting here twiddling our thumbs. Zach, what about you?
I think it depends what level you're talking about, right? If you're looking specifically at college, I'm a little biased towards the guys who went to my high school. One's playing at Yeshiva University, one spent a couple years at Pratt, and I think he's transferring. Generally, just watching and reading about Yeshiva University right now for sure brings me a great sense of pride. Knowing one of my high school guys is on the team and knowing they haven't lost since 2019 is really, really cool. Whenever I play at Texas, whether with a women's team or pickup or whatnot, I love showing that a guy in a kippah can play basketball. So them doing it on a national stage, I found really, really fun. I mean, Ryan Terrell, I watched him play in Maryland when he was a freshman. He's unbelievable. I think they threw him alley-oops back-to-back plays. He finished two of three of them. He did a layup where he jumped, did a full 360 in the air, and then finished the layup. It was stuff I've never seen. So seeing amazing Jewish talent like that's been really cool. And then obviously past the college level, it's great to see Denny come over from Israel and make an impact on a level that's not just showing up like some awesome Israeli players have in the past, but it's wearing shoes that say Yizkor on, I think it was Yom HaShoah or Yom HaZikaron, and lighting the Chanuki on Hanukkah and things like that, and actively being excited about the representation that he's bringing.
That's awesome. Zach, the Ryan story actually sounds to me like when we were younger, had Tamir Goodman actually gone and played at YU, which would have probably been he's done great things, but he didn't have much of a college basketball career, and he might have been able to have that more at YU. Maiya, what about you?
Sure. So first one that came to mind, I had to think, was when I was a senior in college at Columbia. Maryland actually won the women's national championship, and they had an Israeli American player named Shai Doron, who on TV they always called Shay Doron.
Yeah.
But I remember watching that game in Wien Hall at Columbia with some of my softball teammates because we all really liked basketball, and I felt that sense of pride of like an Israeli athlete coming in at a high level, winning the national championship. That was really exciting. But then fast forward, I played in the Maccabi in Israel on 3 different occasions. And one summer, a couple of my friends went to the women's basketball final, which was Israel versus the US, and she was playing. And to see the whole arena, it was in a high school in Ra'anana, but it was like packed. She is a celebrity. It wasn't just like, oh, we're watching it. It was like that was actually incredible to see the other side of her experience after seeing her in the US. And also say something else I feel a lot of pride in, because on the women's side is, I'm sure people know this, but a lot of WNBA players, a lot of women's basketball players in general end up playing professionally in Israel because it's a strong league and it's a way for them to supplement their income and get good experience. Candace Wiggins, who played at Stanford and is La Jolla Country School graduate, like I am, played in Israel also. And I see that. And when I see WNBA players who've spent time in Israel, I always also feel pride in that, even though it's not about their identity, but that sense of they have a connection there. Like I'd love to ask them about it. And just like, I think that's a really neat part of the women's game.
I just want to add real quick, you mentioned that one of the Texas graduates from last year, Jordan Holmes, who's in the NBA or in the WNBA, played in Israel this past year. And I know her because I practiced with her last year. So it's pretty cool. I messaged her back and forth. She was like, her teammates were singing Yom Huledet Sameach to her on her birthday and stuff like that. And she's on Maccabi Ra'anana. So I agree. It's really cool to see them overseas in Israel.
Yeah, Israel, both for men and women, it's been this huge platform to go over, get some experience. Alicia Clark, actually, who is a great WNBA player, recently won the title of Storm. I was interviewing her a couple years ago, and I said, you might be the greatest Israeli women's basketball player. Oh, she goes, no. Shea Doron is by far, she chose to not really play in the WNBA. She is that level. But she's Israeli. She wants to be home. I get that. So I want to thank everyone for their time. Erez, where can they find your show?
Yeah, Rabbi on the Sidelines every Thursday on YouTube. It's youtube.com/Sinai Temple Presents, or you can become Facebook friends with me, just Erez Sherman. Every Thursday, we're hopefully going to keep it up for at least a year as we find more inspiring stories of faith on and off the court.
Awesome. Zach, what's next steps for you? Are you graduating?
Yeah, I'm graduating next month and hopefully get to travel a little bit this summer, depending on where COVID allows me to go, and then off to DC to work in consulting and play basketball and find a new Jewish basketball community there. The one thing is sad, I grew up in Dallas and they have some of the best like men's leagues in the world. Tony Romo's played in it. LaMarcus Aldridge has played in it. Really high level guys. So I'll try to replicate some of that in DC.
And Maiya, tell us a little bit about the Hillel and how people can find you if they're thinking of looking for schools.
Oh, please come find us. TexasHillel.org. Reach out. We're right here in Austin. great place to be a Jewish student. Zach, I think, can attest to that as well. So we are here wrapping up this school year in a few weeks, getting ready for summer, and then excited to welcome a whole new crop of students in the fall. So
Hopefully in person.
yes, that is the plan. So
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
thanks,
Thank
Jeremy.
you, Jeremy.
Yeah.